So, the Tomb Raider series, or more should I say, the more recent Tomb Raider series, starting with the 2013 reboot and going up to this year, 2018, the series, as of late, has been very divisive. Some people love them just as much, maybe a little more or a little less so, than the original titles for the PlayStation 1. Others think the new titles are just a blatant ripoff of Uncharted. And then, of course, you also have the third opinion, which I don't know if this is, a common opinion or not, that likes both Uncharted and Tomb Raider, and maybe likes one a little more over the other, but doesn't have a problem with the other games. And now I fall into the third opinion. But earlier this year, I watched the Tomb Raider movie that came out, and you know, obviously I knew going into it that it was supposed to be a movie based off of the 2013 reboot. And well, let's just say I have a lot of things I want to talk about. So with that being said, let's talk about Tomb Raider 2018. Alright, so one of the first things I want to talk about in terms of the Tomb Raider movie is just, the movie felt short. And I know that's just because I've played the 2013 game, and that game is fairly long. So I understand why, to me, it felt short. But, or I also know that, games can afford to be longer than movies because, with games, the developer has to put in interesting gameplay for the player to get from point A to point B. Whereas movies, they can't have any or they can have filler content, but they can't have a lot of filler content that's going to bog the movie down. The movie has to have, extremely good pacing, or else just, the viewer of the movie is just going to, they're going to tune out, they're going to zone out, whatever, and probably eventually either fall asleep or turn the movie off. So I understand that. But despite that, just watching it, it seemed to be as if something was missing, and I can never truly put my finger on it. But that was point number one. Now, point number two, before I get into any other bits of the story, I will say, I want to talk about the ending of the movie. And just something that happened at the ending, more or less. Now, I really did like how at the end of the movie, we saw Lara's stepmother, Anna, and it really actually showed that she was working with Trinity. I like that because, it helps, the viewers and players connect the dots between that game and Rise a little bit easier. Because Tomb Raider 2013, I know there were some Trinity mentions or references, whatever, but there wasn't a whole lot to go off of, and especially if you didn't actually end up finding everything. So that helps out a bit. And at the same time, something that personally bothered me was how at the end of the movie, they had Lara go back to that pawn shop from earlier in the movie and buy 2 pistols. I know why they did it. They did that to, remind people who played the games from the PS1 era, have them, like, nostalgia for them is what I'm going there. That's where I'm going with that. And also can make her look like a badass in a way. Now, I also know that at the end of the 2013 reboot, Lara did dual wield the pistols to defeat Matthias at the end. I get that. But she did that more so, she was able to get the gun out of Matthias' hands And just at that point, it was all or nothing, all about, her survival and fighting to reach Sam. It was less about, being a badass. And part of the reason why it bothered me was just, we all know, like anyone who has ever known anything about Tomb Raider knows that Lara ends up being a badass archaeologist who doesn't take shit from anybody. But the way the new games were written was to show Lara's origin story, how she got to the point where she was at in the PS1 games. An example of this, in the 2013 game, when Lara first has to kill somebody, you see that she is absolutely horrified at that fact. She knows deep down herself that she had to do it to survive, but, she doesn't care about that. She's horrified. She's never had to kill anyone before. And it even takes, her mentor Roth getting on, the radio and saying, yeah, that couldn't have been easy, but, it was either him or you. And that's not word for word, but paraphrasing here. And eventually she does rationalize the decision. But it definitely was not easy. And we start to get that in the movie. But the way to say it, God, what's a good way to say this? What we get in the movie is we sort of see that, but then it's immediately undercut by, a moment, or an even bigger plot point. It's undercut by an even bigger plot point, and just, it kind of takes away from it, especially since this even bigger plot point is something that didn't even happen in the game. But let's go on to a little minor, rant, tangent, whatever. Because a little side note I have marked in my notes is I noticed immediately that the actor who was playing Matthias was pronouncing it Matthias, no H in there. And it's not a big deal. It doesn't bother me at all. It just makes me wonder if it was a problem between the director or the actor or, just whatever. Just a little something I picked up. Anyway, tangent over. Now, obviously, going back to the end of the movie was a little strange. I did find that it was strange that they did immediately go and have her buy 2 pistols. Because besides the one moment in the 2013 game, everything I've seen from Rise, I can't recall a time that she dual-wielded pistols from what I've seen. In fact, not in the 2013 game, but in Rise, and especially from what I've seen of Shadow, stealth is definitely more of a thing, or yeah, even in 2013, really, stealth is definitely more of a focus. So, I don't know. Either way, let's move on to my third plot point. And my third plot point goes off of the even bigger plot point that undercut Lara being horrified in the movie about killing somebody for the first time. And that plot point was Lara's father, Richard, in the movie does not, end up committing suicide. Because we learned through the games, especially Rise, that her father committed suicide. And this part, for me, just knowing what happens in the games and then, of course, what happens for the movie, was definitely one of the strangest decisions that I, noticed and picked up on. And I wonder what was going through the heads of the writers to, rationalize that decision, because that is a huge plot point in the games. And to have Richard still be alive and have Lara somehow even find him on that island, or I guess technically in the movie Richard found her, but I don't know. But I will say, a little backstory with Richard. We know in the 2013 reboot that he's dead. And of course we learn in Rise, like I already said, he did kill himself. Now, he did so, as we would learn, because, everyone thought he was just going insane. And in Rise, everyone, I believe including Anna, even starts to think Lara is starting to go down the same path. But, all Lara wants to do is just prove that her father was correct. And for the games, after barely escaping Yamatai with Reyes, Jonah, and Sam, Lara realized her father's other findings very well could be true. And knowing that is what makes her want to go through his other nodes and keep exploring. And like I've already said in the movie, or like I already stated for the movie, Richard was alive the whole time. He was there on the island on Yamatai. And he doesn't recognize Lara at first, or if he does, I'm still a little confused on that. If he did recognize her, he thought she was kind of like a mirage in a way, like he was seeing her, like a hallucination. I think that's what really happened. But at some point, he does end up helping her. And of course, she disobeys him on numerous occasions. And, and it's at that point that they added almost kind of like an Uncharted-esque supernatural element to the movie, and that's how Richard eventually does die. In fact, it really reminds me of the supernatural element and how that started in Uncharted Drake's Fortune, where you open up the giant sarcophagus that was El Dorado, and with the cursed body inside, it starts the curse and it seeps into whoever's standing near it. And that's what it reminded me here with what they did with Himiko, because it was when you opened up the thing, when it opened up her not casket I guess, but the whatever kind of coffin she was in, I guess. You push the top open and you don't automatically get cursed, you don't get infected, whatever. But if you touch a part of her body, you get infected by whatever disease or whatever she had that's still very much so contagious. And of course Richard ends up getting touched by, I don't believe it's her, but by someone who was already infected. But he ends up, instead of fully turning, he ends up killing himself at that point to blow up Himiko's tomb before he could become fully infected. And that's Richard's presence in the story and how he ends up dying at the end. And again, it's one of those things where it does confuse me, because in the games, like I said before, it was such a huge plot point that everyone thought Richard was going insane and he ended up killing himself because of it. Because, again, everyone thought Lara was going down that same route. But, at the same time, she did have, the facts to back up, hey, her father was right about Yamatai and the Devil's Triangle. But I don't know. I mean, it can get a little bit of emotional, but, if you've played the games, then you just know that that's a huge plot point that they completely changed for the sake of the movie. And I don't think, plot point worked as well as the plot of the 2013 game. But anyway, let's move on to my fourth plot point, which is the overall presence of Himiko. So in the movie, Himiko didn't have anywhere near as big a presence as in the game. The whole game was centered around trying to get off of Yamatai, and Himiko would bring storms to get rid of all escape vehicles. And while Himiko was still in the movie, her spirit wasn't trapped on the island per se. She was a carrier for a disease that turned people kind of zombie-like. And as I was typing this, now I wrote the script. In fact, the last edit was on June 14th, because I wrote this through Google Docs. And as I was typing that, I wrote, "It makes me want The Last of Us Part 2 even more." So, I don't know. But yeah, she definitely had, this kind of a smaller role, It wasn't her entire spirit trapped to the island, and because her spirit was trapped on the island, she didn't want anyone else to leave. And it took, through the game, of course, Sam became like a vessel for Himiko in a way, and then when her spirit was like trying to like take over Sam's body at the end, thanks to Matthias being an idiot. Or I guess technically, I don't know. I'm not going to get into that right now. Of course, Lara took her torch and just jammed it into, I guess, what would be the spirit. And of course, that killed the spirit, allowed it to not be trapped to the island anymore, and then they could leave. But again, movie, she was just a carrier for disease. So, yeah. But I don't know. It's another thing where they took something from the game and put it on a very, very much so smaller scale. And another way that they took something from the game and made it even smaller was my fifth point, which was there's a significantly smaller cast of characters in the movie, which is really weird for me to say, that there was a smaller amount of characters in a movie compared to a game. But let me say this. I obviously don't mean that the game had a larger cast than the movie. What I mean is the game has more supporting characters. That's what I mean. Because in the movie you have Matthias, Richard, Lou Ren, and Anna. In the game, you have Sam, who's really a main character, or maybe not a main character, but a very strong supporting character. You've got Matthias, who is the main antagonist. You've got Jonah, you've got Reyes, you've got Roth, you've got Grimm, you've got Alex. And really, you could throw Himiko into the mix as well. Well, her spirit, anyway. And in the movie, you really don't get much on Anna until the end. And, Richard and Matthias, we learn at one point, worked together. And were probably even friends, or the very least, kind of closer allies. Who both end up dead just a couple of minutes apart from one another. And Lou Ren's character, that's my next point, as I lost my place in the script. Lou Ren's character could have been really bad, but the actor did a great job. The actor actually did a really good job with the part, and really all the actors that they cast did do a really good job. The acting I have no problem with in the movie. But in the game, all the characters have their own moments to shine, put quotes around shine there, and all of them get developed, even if some get way more than others. Roth, I say, gets the most development, but he's Lara's mentor. Jonah and Reyes are right behind him, still getting quite a bit of good development for their characters. Sam is more of a middle-of-the-road character, mainly used as a plot device, rather than a character, but we do learn that she is the best friend of Lara. And sadly, Grimm and Alex, both very good characters, get the least amount of development. And what really sucks for Alex is if you play the game, you know he gets friend zoned right before his own death. But still, before his own death, allows Lara to escape. So, friend zoned until the end. And like I said before, the characters in the movie, they did a good job. The actors did for the characters. But I couldn't stop thinking about how much, I was expecting to see Roth. Because how can you take such a huge plot point, or not plot point, a huge character from the game, Lara's mentor, and just get rid of him, But going on a little more minor, I guess this is a little bit bigger tangent than the prior one. But on another note here, I didn't really like what they did to Matthias. In the game, he was meant to be sort of a cult-type leader who could get people to listen to what he had to say, which would then lead them to wanting to follow. In the movie, he's just a guy that wants to go home and see his family. That's literally his goal, is just be able to go home, get off the island, and see his family. I mean, and overall, his end goal is the same in both the movie and the game, though we don't know if he has, we don't know if in the game he has a family or not, but his end goal is the same overall. But the difference there is, in the game, he was just going about getting off the island the wrong way. Whereas in the movie, he's described and shown to be perfectly fine with murdering in cold blood and giving Trinity a piece of Himiko. And as well as that, he even tells Lara that, he murdered her father. Which, of course, we found out not be true, but that's still a thing he said to her. And we also learned that from Lou Ren earlier in the movie that apparently Matthias murdered his father too. So, I don't know. But anyway, going back to my little tangent there. I also have mixed feelings about Matthias being connected to the Croft family. In the game, Matthias is just a guy who'd been stuck on the godforsaken island too long and had no idea who Lara or her friends were. In the movie, Matthias and Richard definitely knew each other, and that extended to Lara. And I don't know why. That's another plot point I don't understand why they did. I mean, granted, okay, if you're going to have Richard actually be alive and a part of the story in the movie, I mean, how else would you, explain Richard still being alive and on the island without knowing who Matthias was at all? But I'm not a fan of having Matthias somehow connected to the Croft family in that way. But that's all the notes that I wrote for this script. But what I can say, overall thoughts, I feel like if it was intended to be a standalone movie, it would have been fine. It would have been a fine movie, and honestly one of the better kind of video game adaptation, not video game adaptation, one of the better, if I can word here. I honestly feel like if it was meant to be a standalone movie, it would have been, a pretty good, and one of the better video game based movies. But the fact that we all know it was meant to be an adaptation of the 2013 Crystal Dynamics reboot, it was good. It was good, but it definitely had missed potential, and it missed a lot of potential that it had. Which it does kind of pain me to say because, I did enjoy the movie, and I would recommend people to watch it, especially if they know, if they know Tomb Raider, I would recommend people to watch it. But if you're going in to watch it expecting the 2013 game, just shorter, with some things cut out, but overall it's still the same experience, don't expect that at all. It's definitely more so a standalone movie with just some of the set pieces from the game. which, for example, the a bit earlier in the game where you have to climb like the abandoned airplane. That's, I believe, like on the side of a cliff. But for the most part, like I said before, it definitely feels more of a standalone title. But that we all know that's not what it was meant to be. So it was good, but it wasn't as good as it could have been. But anyway, this video is over 24 minutes, and that's all I've got to say about it. Again, the Tomb Raider movie 2018 was good, a lot of missed potential, but all in all, I hope you enjoyed this Let's Talk About video. I'm pretty sure that's what I'm going to go with the title, but it's essentially movie review, or a movie review. And until next time, guys, I've been James with the Geeky Comrade, and I'll see you later. Bye, guys.